Well, welcome into the studio somebody who's very familiar with this studio and this station, and he is Michael Clark. Michael, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Very good to see you, Geoff. I mean, what's changed? I mean, Jeff Braun's doing the news, Kyle Milroy's producing. It's great.
Yeah. All right. So many of us have, and I once asked a good friend of mine, a great writer by the name of Jim Taylor, is it true everybody's got a book in them? And he said, yeah, it might be a bad one, though. It's true. But many of us have this kind of dream that I'd love to write a book. And it might be, pick the topic, whatever it is. Most of us never do it. We think about it and we kind of dream about it and we imagine, but we never actually sit down and do the work because it's a heavy slog to write a book. No matter what the book is, no matter how far apart the covers happen to be in the end, it's a tough slog. But you did it.
I did.
You decided to do it, and the book is called Clean Sweep, and it's a crime novel set here in Winnipeg. So why was fiction the way you wanted to go?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the nucleus of this, because, in fact, before I came over to CJOB to do the road trip in 2009, I'd been messing around with screenplays for a while. I'd actually even I reached out to Colin Friesen, of course, the big white, and I had this idea in my head. I can tell stories, I can come up with an idea, and I can write $1 million screenplay. Well, yeah, me and 7 million other people have the same idea.
Yeah, I mean, how many great scripts are sitting on shelves in Hollywood?
There's millionaires in Hollywood who have never had their movies made. They just get optioned and make their money. But what happened is I've actually, in my career as a writer and as a reporter, one of the things I've done and I've taken advantage of is the writer-in-residence program at the Millennium Library. The first time I did this was with Linda Holman back in the year 2000, and then the second time was in 2009 with Bruce McManus.
So how does that work?
So what you do is you basically submit different writings, and then you get together with the writer-in-residence, and then you start to develop the idea, and that's where it all started. So big tip of the hat to Bruce McManus.
All right, so you send a couple of short stories in, and he says, yeah, this is awful, or it's good, or here's how you can make it better, or that kind of thing?
Well, what happened was that myself and a couple of other writers that wanted to do more fiction-related things got together, and then over time, I just kept writing more of it, kept submitting it back to Bruce. He liked it, and he just said, keep going. And I just, that's what I did. And then what happened was that I kind of reached a point with it where it was, you better finish this. And it was actually shortly after I left the radio program in 2015. And I just decided, you're either never going to finish this and you're just going to keep talking about it, or you need to do it. So I did it. And I'd like to say that the story went along the lines of, and then he sent it out to 200 publishers, like, you hear the stories. I sent it out to 3. I was surprised as anybody when ECW Press gave me a call and said, we like it, we want to publish it, and can you give us 2 more? So that's where the arc is going now.
So there's a market then for crime fiction.
I would definitely believe that there is. And in fact, when I first met with Bruce, because Bruce is known as a playwright, and a very good one at that. Right now he's adapted A Christmas Carol, which is at MTC. And the thing that he said to me, I remember he was standing outside. He had to get some fresh air, as the saying goes. And he says to me, well, you know what you're writing? You're writing commercial fiction. He says, you can make $1 million doing it, but I can get a grant for $2,000 because I write plays. But no, he was a great influence on the book and Winnipeg. I mean, so many people, I traveled extensively across North America, and I got to see all these different cities, and I thought to myself, well, what makes Winnipeg special? And I think the one thing that really makes Winnipeg special is our criminal history.
And we've talked about the crime problems in Winnipeg, and we've talked about it almost ad nauseum on this station and elsewhere. Winnipeg, it's a topic of conversation here. We know that there is a long history of biker gangs, of organized crime, of indigenous crime, of ethnic crime groups, of just petty criminals, of just street gangs, drug trade, all that stuff. We got it all here.
Well, it's very true. And so it was easy to kind of start with that with the book. There's something going on with the bad guys. There's a biker gang boss murder that happens. So now all of a sudden the cops are looking for this person. The people in the underworld are looking for this person, but there's something else going on. And that's where the story really blows up. And in fact, not to give too much of it away, but you've probably heard a little bit lately about what's going on with the federal government. There was a story recently on the Fifth Estate talking about the fact that there's been these payments to people who are victims of MK Ultra back in the 1950s and 1960s in Montreal. Well, here's where I'm going to just put it out there. Not too many people know this, but Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, who is the figurehead behind MK Ultra at the Allen Memorial Institute, guess where he got his start? Brandon. Back when it was the Brandon Asylum from 1929 to 1936. So just pocket that away in the gray matter, so when you read the book, you kind of get where I like to go in respect to whacked out conspiracies.
Yeah, all right. So you've drawn on a lot of real life stuff.
Absolutely.
Sometimes writers will say, well, I wrote about my hometown because I didn't have to travel to do research. Right? It's as much driven by economics as anything else. But you found enough here. You didn't feel compelled to write about Route 66 or any of the places that you've traveled over the years. Well,
and as much as I enjoyed going to these places, in fact, my third book may actually touch on some of that. But what I had decided, and this actually came to me, it was a gift. It really was. It happened because a good friend of mine, who the lead character Tommy Bosco is loosely based on, it's an interesting story. He's a reformed smuggler, and he got caught. He did his time. He lost everything as proceeds of crime, and he has completely reformed himself. He's actually one of my best friends, and it's something that when he tells the story and you realize how fantastic it is, but then when you start to say to yourself, wow, that's a fantastic story. How can I make it even more fantastic? How can I take it to the next level?
So part of this story then is, it's a crime novel, but it's about kind of redemption after a fashion too, right? There's that element to it.
Well, it definitely is, because I think unfortunately more often than not, when you hear about people who have been involved in any form of criminal activity, that we automatically paint them with this wide notched bristle brush of you will forever be this person. In fact, the character that the lead character is based on, he even told me a story about someone in law enforcement basically approaching him as he came back and basically saying, essentially, you're a piece of garbage. You're always going to be a piece of garbage, and I got my eye on you. And so, it's.
But even the character of the book, even though he's sort of reformed himself, he ain't Bing Crosby.
Oh, he has an edge.
He's pretty rough around the edges, this guy.
And well, we can also talk about the fact that his reformation, if you will, reformation. He's a pastor. He actually looks after a Skid Row mission in Winnipeg. But let's just say that when he does a sermon, it's something you may hear in rumors if it's very raw, but it still brings that message.
All right. I want to come back and talk more. By the way, McNally's the launch?
McNally Robinson. Now, folks, right now the book is going to be available for pre-order. We're going to get into that in a moment, but McNally Robinson is going to have a proper launch in March.
Okay. Michael Clark is author of the book Clean Sweep, and we'll tell you how you can get a pre-order on that when we come back.
More with Geoff Currier in just a moment on 680 CJOB.
We will pursue this conversation about writing. Michael Clark has completed his first novel. He's discovered that not only is there a first, but he's got a deal for two more. The first novel is called Clean Sweep. There'll be a launch in the new year at McNally. So if we want to pre-order, what do we do?
All you have to do is go to Amazon.ca. Just look for Clean Sweep by Michael J. Clark, because I decided it's time for me at the age of 48 to become fancy. So you can check it out there. Also, McNally Robinson, if you go to their website, you can find out more about the book launch as well as pre-orders. And you can also check out some early reviews from Goodreads.com. And already some very favorable reviews from people who really enjoy crime fiction.
All right, so when you go through this process of writing, and you've never done this thing before, what tells you can do it? Because we started off this conversation, Michael, about, so many people saying that, I'd like to write a book someday. But I have a feeling but for a lot of people, it's not, part of it is that it's probably too much work for a lot of people, but the other thing is they may not believe that they can actually do it.
Well, and that's something that I would like to say to any budding writer who's listening out there today on 680 CJOB is that you're going to have those moments of self-doubt. There's going to be times when you're just simply going to take the 100 pages, the 200 pages, the 10 pages, and you're just going to put it on the shelf and you're going to walk away from it. And you kind of have to respect that when you're putting that first novel together. Now, as we've mentioned, this all kind of started around April of 2009, and basically by the spring of 2016 it was done, and by the summer, that's when everything happened with ECW Press out of Toronto. So you just simply have to find the time, and that's the hardest thing too. When you're working a day job, when you're trying to get this time to write. Well, let me put it to you this way. There's not that much on TV anymore that I really need to watch. Like,
we have more time than we think. But first of all, if somebody says I don't have time, everybody has the same amount of time.
Absolutely.
In a day, right? You don't get 28 hours in a day. Right, you get the same 24 the rest of us do.
It's true, and the thing is, take the time. Whether it's an hour, whether it's before you're heading to work in the morning, whether you're doing it at night, whether it's I'm taking 5 hours on the weekend, but also be kind to yourself. I mean, if you sit in front of the computer for 5 hours and maybe you put out a paragraph, well, Hey, look at that paragraph. Fantastic. Or you crumple up 10 pages that isn't up to where you want it to be. That's an accomplishment.
That's okay. Yeah.
Every single thing that you are doing to get this book to happen is important. And you may not see it at the time, but believe me, when that call comes.
So discovering something that doesn't work still has value.
Absolutely.
Edison used to talk about that, right? He said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work.
Well, and that comes down to the process. And what a process. I mean, it's one thing to write a book. Then you go into the process.
Did you have the whole plot done before you started this book, or did the plot reveal itself to you as you were writing?
It was a reveal, a slow reveal, and it was something that I would be looking for certain little bits and pieces. Sometimes you don't even know why you're looking for these things. It's like for me, and I've described this to friends of mine and people who write, it's literally like your characters are standing behind you. They got their arms crossed and they're tapping their foot, and it's like, okay, well, what happens next? And where do you take this? And the one thing that I love about being a lifelong Winnipegger is it's all the stories that you hear or you read about that aren't necessarily the front page stories. I mean, there's things that I have remembered from page 17. Little things about when they used to spew cadmium into the atmosphere in the 1950s. That sure, nothing happened with that. Really? Are you sure about that? The polio epidemic. What if that was chemical warfare? Like you start going to these interesting, weird places, and when you go there,
you have to give yourself permission to do that. Then, right?
Absolutely, and the one thing.
But in our workaday, day-to-day lives, maybe we don't give ourselves permission to do that.
Well, I think the main issue for a lot of people is that they're going through their day. They completely have the blinders on. I mean, what is the conversation around the water cooler these days? It's what did you binge watch, or what's on your phone? Check out my YouTube video. I mean, it's just this whole idea that we're completely being bombarded with things to get us to ignore what we should be seeing and what else is going on. So, I mean, I've been a conspiracy fan for as long as I can remember. One of the first books I picked up in junior high, for whatever reason, was 6 Seconds in Dallas. I've been fascinated with the JFK assassination ever since. I got an A+ on my report back in grade 12. So I just said, why isn't this stuff going on in Winnipeg? In the fictional form, I believe that it is.
What's happened, of course, over the last 100 years or so, there was a time when people used to tell each other stories. or, you'd pick the banjo down off the wall and pass it around and everybody would take turns singing songs. We now pay people a lot of money to do that for us.
This is true.
We pay people a lot of money to sing songs for us and to tell us stories, but we watch movies and television, and so it's still possible. We all have stories in us, though, don't we, that we could be telling, rather than listening to somebody else's stories all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, I mean, as much as my genre today is going to be crime fiction, I've already started to look even further ahead. I mean, do I have a novel in me that's about the Great Canadian Experience? Like, is there something else that's there? And I mean, all I can tell you today is they like me for crime fiction at ECW Press, and that's what I'm going to do for the next foreseeable future.
Kid, will you at some point be able to make a living writing novels?
Well, that's the big...
Because there can't be more than... You can count on your fingers the number of people in Canada who do that.
This is true. It's just like a lot of the creative arts in Canada. It's, that whole question of, are they going to go to the States? But the thing is that it does happen. Like, you think of people like Linwood Barclay, Canadian writers, Canadian crime fiction, it can happen. And I think even more so, the thing that makes me think about Winnipeg and I want to kind of end on this is that you drive around Winnipeg all the time and you see the white trucks from all of the film productions that are going on in this city. And Winnipeg is always somebody else. Winnipeg is Chicago. Winnipeg is some Midwestern town. And I want to say to the creative minds in Winnipeg, we got to stop doing that. We've got plenty of great stories, plenty of great regional things that can be told here. And it doesn't have to be Los Angeles, and it doesn't have to be New York. It can be Winnipeg, and I'm going to make it that way.
Michael Clark, great to see you again. Thanks a lot for this. Good luck with the novel. Let us know when the release party's happening. But the book will be called and will be available in the new year. Clean Sweep by Michael Clark.
Thank you, Geoff.
News coming up at the top of the hour.